Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over the market, let's go over Tesla and figure out what has happened so far to start off this fresh week. By the way, going to be a pretty volatile week potentially, so I'll go over as to why that might be. But yeah, all that being said, let's jump right into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And again, my membership section for YouTube is down below if you're interested to join that, where I share my intraday thoughts on Tesla. The link is down below for $2.99 a month. But moving right into it, let's talk about Tesla. So Tesla closing the day at pretty much 3.5%, putting us at pretty much exactly on the dot at $269 per share. Compared to the market, a pretty nice outperformance for the most part. Tesla did start the day off actually a little bit weak. I think it was down about 1.5%, maybe 2% at most. But we covered not only all of that, but of course went well into the green as well, which is great to see. So a few couple things to talk about here that are important that I did talk about, of course, in my overall membership section as well. So first and foremost, a lot of people pay attention to this. That's important to note is, of course, the 21 email, right? We did close actually just barely above it. I wouldn't personally call this a convincing close, but however, we did close above the 21 email, which is around $268. So we're about $1 above it. Again, you know, not the most convincing close in the world, but nonetheless still pretty decent. So that's number one. A lot of people pay attention to that. They use that as an indicator. But, you know, we just see how tomorrow plays out if we just collapse right under, because again, it's kind of on thin ice here since we're just barely closing above it. It's not super duper convincing. Now, the thing is, it's interesting here, however, is on the daily. If you look at the MACD all the way at the bottom, hopefully you guys can see, let me double check. Yeah, hopefully you guys can see that right there at the bottom, but the MACD you can see it's not looking too good, right? You know, it's looking kind of bearish, right? You can see the green, which is like the bullish, and the red, which is the bearish line, if you will, right? The green is below the red, that's kind of bearish. It's well below the red. And on top of that, the bars you can see on the red are kind of getting bigger and bigger. Even though we had a nice green day today, the bars still got like more, like, I guess, larger, if you will, to the downside, to the red side, right? The red bar was bigger than yesterday's red bar on Friday. So keep in mind that the MACD is still showing that the overall process here, you know, it's still kind of bearish. Like, it's still not looking that good, right? So keep that in mind. The RSI still overall like playing out that bearish divergence, right? Even though we're well above this price over here, you know, technically, like if you were to like look at it like this, right, you can see, you know, if you draw like that, you can see it's still technically making a higher low, right? Assuming we bounce from here, which so far we did, I guess. But, you know, we are still making a higher low compared to this level down here at 241. Obviously, the RSI is showing the literal opposite. It's making a lower low, right? So that bearish divergence is still definitely there, which tells me that this move to the downside probably isn't really over just yet. Of course, as usual, especially in the daily, it doesn't mean that the downside has to be just straight down, no bounces at all, right? You get bounces, of course. I did talk about how, you know, last week, and I'm to my members all the time as well. And in the video last week, I talked about how the volume price is extremely important to pay attention to here. Right. And we talked about how, you know, this area of around 260-ish to around 250-ish, right? That kind of 10-point-ish range is a pretty important range, right? It's a very important range because that is the range that we could potentially see a bounce at, because that, as you can see, where the volume starts increasing, right? This obviously tells you that how many, like, what's the volume of shares traded at that price, right? This isn't just how many shares are traded all together throughout the day. That's, for the most part, usually somewhat irrelevant. However, this tells us the fact that, you know, at this price level, people are usually buying or selling shares, and it acts like a support and a resistance. If you're coming down into it, it's a support. If you're going back up into it, it's a resistance. In this case, of course, acting as a support. So we did finally bounce off of that 250s area, and now we're, of course, well back into the 260s, almost even 270s. So that's kind of what I was talking about. However, with that being said, there's still a lot of indicators to me pointing that the move to the downside isn't over just yet. And if we snap below 250, we will be seeing pretty much 243, almost like a double bottom potentially here almost instantly. However, the thing that's scary is if we do snap 240, which I personally think we will. Again, I don't think it'll happen right away. I think it'll take time. There'll be some consolidation, things like that. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if it even takes maybe even almost a month. However, with that being said, I personally think it will happen, and I personally think that we will come down somewhere to the low 200s. I don't know exactly where. It could be just 220s, could be even close to 210s, maybe even 200 itself. Like, I don't know for sure exactly where, but I do believe that it is on its way. And you can see that's where the volume really picks up. And the reason I say 240 is because you can see right below this kind of 243 to 241 area, the volume really starts disappearing. Like, there's almost no volume traded in between just below 240 all the way down to pretty much 220. Like, there's very little volume traded within that area. So keep that in mind. That usually means, of course, not always, but usually means that if you go through that area, you'll pretty much slice through it like butter. Whether it's going up, which is exactly what we did, we pretty much sliced through that like butter, right? You can see For instance, a perfect example, right? Where this volume kind of, starts receding over here, which is around that 210, maybe even as high as 220. We kind of went up to those levels a few times over here, even over here. But the second we broke above that 210, 220 range, you can see we sliced right above it and pretty much jumped from 220 to 240 almost instantly. Like it took literally 2 days and we just rocketed past that. That's kind of an example. And of course, it works both ways, right? So if we slice below 240, same thing will happen that happened when we were going back up through it, right? Just keep that in mind. That is important to understand. Now, I saw some people talking about how people were like very short into the earnings. There's been another short squeeze on Tesla, and we're going to like the moon and things like that. So I thought I figured I'd show you guys where is that's right here. No, not that. Sorry, this right here. So why isn't it showing? Let me go ahead and short volume. It should be showing it, and I'm not entirely sure why it's not. I guess I'll have to fix it and show you guys. It's right here. There we go. So here you can see the short, this is the short volume, right, from Finra. This is pretty much showing us, quite literally what it sounds like, the short volume, right? How short is Tesla? How many shares are short Tesla, TSLA? And you can see it did go down obviously ever since, but nonetheless, it's still kind of sideways, right? It's nothing too elevated, like especially when it was back here, or if you even all the way up here, right? It's not, it's shorted, but it's not like anything completely out of this world shorted either, right? It's not that bad, though it is a little bit elevated, but nothing too crazy that would imply, a massive short squeeze again. So at least in my view. So keep that in mind. Maybe if we get lower, then maybe that's where the shorts will pile in, and that's where, we'll potentially get that squeeze again. But at the moment right now, I wouldn't put too much weight into that or like hope into that at all, personally, right? Following that, we of course have the Bollinger Bands, as you can see, right? As we came to the green line, we came up to the white line, danced around it, didn't really touch the red line, but we're kind of dancing around the white line right now, though we are closing below it. So that's something to consider as well. Right, that's not really ideal, but it's nothing too crazy as well. So keep that in mind as well. Ultimately, what I wouldn't be surprised, and this is what I mainly talked about, is going to be as follows. Let me remove this for now. So let's go to the 65-minute chart, right? So this chart essentially shows me what I think will happen. And this chart is going to be, let me take the Fibonacci, is going to be as follows, right? I personally think what we're happening right now, or what we're seeing right now, is going to be kind of a dead cat bounce, maybe a bear flag setup, something like that for the most part. And taking the Fibonacci, you can go from the swing high, obviously, right, to potentially what looks to be the swing low for now. And you look at the levels, and essentially what I wouldn't be surprised is if we come up to at least a 0.382, which really is not that much farther above us, right? Around $271. Personally, I'll be eyeballing the 0.5 level, and they can go as high as 282, though that's, in my opinion, a little bit unlikely, but not impossible. I'm personally looking at usually the 0.5. That's usually the kind of not too greedy, not too, ridiculous, like the very kind of safe, conservative-ish level. That just kind of makes sense to me, right? I like that level personally, the 0.5. So again, with that being said, assuming we get a retracement to the 0.5 level as this dead cat bounce, or maybe even a bear flag or whatever plays out, it'll of course bring us to around the 276 to 277-ish level. And that's where I would not be surprised that we reach to. And then from there, I wouldn't be surprised also if we essentially, from here, come down, right? And then we bounce up somewhere over here, and then we ultimately go lower, right? Something like that would not shock me whatsoever. Just, rough example, of course, rough illustration. It doesn't mean it has to just completely zigzag that easily. We can get some consolidation. There could be some sideways action, right? For instance, on the 65-minute chart, it's not looking that bad, right? The RSI was overbought. You can see it did bounce up from it, which is great to see. The MACD on the 65-minute chart looks, like it's turning a little bit bullish, which to me tells me that there is potentially a bit more room to run here, which of course might take us all the way to that 276 level. But I'll be surprised if we go too much higher than that, especially well above this 282 level again, because that was a massive resistance before. It's kind of 275 to all the way up to this kind of 284 level, like a huge resistance that we had a lot of issues, especially at that low 280s. And I'd be shocked if after what I have seen so far that we just blast right through it before, without making at least another low, whether it's at the least coming down to 240s or maybe even lower. I'll be surprised if we don't do that first, but again, don't hold me to it. You never know for sure. I just think we will. I have been buying this dip. Like I said, I did buy about 35% of my account so far on this dip overall as we were going down in levels, and I will buy the rest of it if we some in 240s, and then the rest will be in the 220s, of course, as well. But that's kind of my personal pattern, my strategy. Of course, it works for me. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, but it does work for me. So all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's kind of what I am seeing right now. The final thing I do want to quickly take a look at is going to be, so we have the seasonality chart, right? You can see August is a pretty okay month for Tesla, right? It's a 54% month that it's green. So it's an overall pretty, it's still a bit of a coin flip, but it's, slightly favored into being an overall positive a month for Tesla than it is a negative month. But with that being said, September and October for Tesla and the markets, especially for September, are usually pretty atrocious. Like if you go to SPY, you can see, right, September is also pretty low, right? It's the lowest percentage of all the months for SPY, 46%. So keep that in mind. So Tesla, of course, most likely not looking too hot for that as well. We can even take a look at something like, where is Apple, right? Even Apple's atrocious in September. Look at this for Apple, right? All the way down at 31%. So September is an atrocious month. So wouldn't it surprise me if August, for the most part, is kind of sideways, not too much happening, maybe a little bit of green, but well, for the most part, a little bit sideways. And I think September is when we might see that fall all the way down to like the low 200s, if I had to take a wild guess. But of course, it can happen earlier, it can happen later. But if I had to guess, it would be September. And the final thing I want to take a look at before I end off this video that I like TrendSpider for, which I have a link below if you're interested in charting on it as well. It's a pretty sweet platform actually, because it has a lot of these cool tools that I really like, is of course the options flow, right? Nice, very easy way to look at options flow that we're going to open up over here. We're going to increase the premium to about 50,000, and we're going to reduce the strike, or the expiration date rather, to, let's do kind of early next year-ish. And you can see it's kind of mixed, right? You can see a lot of green and red bubbles all over the place. So really kind of a mixed opportunity. I mean, it looks a little bit maybe more green than red, but for the most part, it does look fairly mixed between puts and calls. So it seems like there's a lot of indecision as to what Tesla's going to do next. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is it going to go sideways, right? The worst case scenario is to just go sideways, because then both of them really start losing as the, theta essentially just slowly decays at the option, as the stock is probably not doing too much. But for the most part, not a lot of, direction, I guess, from options as I'm seeing right now. So that didn't really give us too much today. Hopefully next time, obviously, once there's a better direction, can give us a better insight into that as well. But for the most part, that's what I am seeing right now. So let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching. The final things I will also mention as a bonus is going to be that I'm looking at are, of course, Disney. I think Disney is not looking too bad over here, looking pretty decent. I do think it's playing out a bit of a bear flag, as you can see. Let me go ahead and extend this actually. I do think Disney's playing out a bit of a bear flag-ish situation right here, which I think will come out and play out to the downside. But I think Disney, if assuming this plays out, will be phenomenal opportunity. And of course, Netflix is not looking too bad as well, going back to the daily. I'm personally eyeballing around 400. If Netflix gets to 400, especially like high 300s, like 380, that's when I'm going to be very interested in Netflix as well. So I'm definitely slowly eyeballing it, but letting it do its thing for now. But all that being said, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button as usual, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.